Hello and welcome to Metabolic Mastery, brought to you by KORR Medical Technologies. I'm Dr. Marc Humbert, this is Dr. Cameron Garber, and let's dive right in. So last episode we talked about fast versus slow metabolism. We talked a little bit about NEAT. Now we're going to dive deeper into that and talk about how that plays into body composition and talk a little bit about weight loss, some different things. But kind of the first point that we want to hit is the contribution of exercise, how that plays into body composition, and this idea of you can't outrun a bad diet.
Right.
Let's talk about that.
Well, so if you were to put a pie chart of all of the calories that we burn.
Like that you chose pie. That was a good.
Yeah, I love pie. It's delicious. So if you were to do a pie chart, the overwhelming majority of that pie chart of the calories that we burn each day are actually made up of just our resting metabolic rate. So that's the main way that we burn calories. And so when we think about gaining or losing weight, we think about what's our calorie balance. The majority of our calorie balance from a burn standpoint actually comes from our resting energy expenditure. And then we think probably exercise is number 2, right? Actually, no. It's our non-exercise activity that makes up the second largest piece of the pie. And then exercise is another wedge. And then other things like the thermic effect of food is a sliver. And some other things can be small slivers. But for the most part, we've got resting metabolic rate, then we've got our non-exercise activities, and then exercise. And so when you think about it, if I'm exercising for 30 to 60 minutes, even to 90 minutes, that's still only a small chunk of our day. The rest of our waking hours is still another 11 to 13 hours of waking hours or more. And so really that exercise period, even if I'm burning a fair amount of calories, like, I don't know, 600 calories during my workout, if I just increase my daily or my non-exercise activity calorie expenditure by 50 calories an hour. So not a ton of movement, but by 50 calories an hour for the other 12 hours that I'm awake or more, there's 600 calories right there. If we can do a bigger activity where we're doing something we really enjoy that burns a lot more calories, now all of a sudden we can make that a lot bigger piece of the pie.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, NEAT is really variable. Right, it can range up to like 2,000 calories between individuals, right?
Right.
And so a high degree of adaptation. And so how are we architecting our lifestyles again to support our body using calories in the best way? Mm-hmm. Let's put it like that. And most people, even if you're exercising a lot, it's maybe 5 days a week. We already know that the average American does not get anywhere near the right. recommended amount of exercise. And so this isn't an ideal world, right?
Right.
Like let's say that we're getting, 5 days of aerobic exercise and 2 to 3 days of strength training at least. That's just, like you mentioned, such a small proportion of the time that we're awake.
Right.
And I think sometimes we make the mistake of, I exercised, and so I don't really have to do much in the rest of the day because I already did that. And so it's easier to let our lifestyle slide, and then we don't move as much throughout the day, right? We don't build our environment in such a way that it encourages movement, and we just try to get all of that in exercise. But that is such a small sliver of the pie.
Right. Oh, absolutely. If you think about it from an ancestral standpoint, again, we're not working out. Our ancestors didn't work out for 40 minutes and then sit at a desk the rest of the day or watch TV or Netflix or whatever, Instead, they literally worked all day long to put food on the table in quite a physical sense, right? And so they spent a fair amount of their time just moving and at a slow, low intensity for the most part, but doing physical labor and doing tasks for the entire day. And so our metabolisms are designed for the slow burn, for that constant, our non-exercise activities being the majority of our non-resting calories that we burn, or non kind of calories in the background. I always consider our resting metabolic rate to be the background calories, just keeping the lights on, keeping the motor running calories versus our activity calories.
Yeah. So bottom line, like exercise, as we'll talk later, is helpful for so many reasons, but in terms of driving fat loss, isn't super effective. There was a research study that came out last year. So this is a systematic review, compiled over 100 different studies, and looked at the effect of exercise on weight loss. And there was a dose response effect, right? So with increasing levels of exercise, there was some amount of weight loss. Above 150 minutes per week of aerobic exercise was kind of the minimum needed to have like an actual meaningful effect in people's lifestyle. And that went all the way up to 300 minutes. But the amount of exercise needed for the amount of weight loss, like it isn't a winning game in the end. And so while there is that dose response effect, there's some caveats to that. So we're gonna throw a wrench into things, and I'm going to talk about the constrained energy model. So Herman Poncer has done a lot of great research in this area, and he's one of the people that pioneered this idea. But basically what it is kind of the prevailing thought beforehand was we take our total energy expenditure and I add in exercise, and that just kind of increases it linearly. The more exercise I add in, the greater my total energy expenditure. And what Poncer found was that is actually constrained. And so while exercise does increase our total energy expenditure throughout the day, it's not as much as what we think. It ends up being blunted. So he actually looked at, if you've heard him talk before, he talks about the Hadza. So it's a hunter-gatherer population in Tanzania, I believe. And anyway, he found that their energy expenditure is actually very similar, where they're doing that kind of more ancestral lifestyle, where they're up and moving and working to put food on the table all day, that their energy expenditure is actually quite similar to the average American, right? But it's some of those other things. How are they eating? What's the quality of the food that they're eating? How are they training their bodies to use that energy most ideally? And so with this constrained energy model, yes, we're burning more energy with exercise, but our body is remarkably efficient. It's really good at turning down or turning up the dial, and it has some different ways to do that. So one is, as you mentioned before, BMR is the biggest component of the energy expenditure, and so our body can actually basically go into power saving mode, right? And so things like immune function, reproductive function, repair functions can be temporarily suppressed, and that can turn down the volume. Our organ sizes can actually change, so they shrink. We talked in the last episode about how our organs, especially brain, liver, kidneys, heart, use a lot of energy. And so if we shrink those, then that portion of energy shrinks. So we can dial down the resting metabolic rate. And then what you mentioned, NEAT, is just our non-exercise activity. Our brain will signal us to do less. So if I'm a fidgeter, maybe I fidget less. If I tend to, it's like instead of going up to the TV, or instead of walking up and changing the channel, right, I'm going to use the remote. Or oh, hey, can you go get me something for the kitchen? Instead of walking out there and getting myself. And so we begin to change those behaviors. Maybe I usually go on a daily walk, and now I don't feel like doing that. And so being able to turn those dials down in terms of resting metabolic rate, in terms of NEAT, then that constrains how much energy that we use throughout the day. And so while, again, exercise does increase our energy expenditure, it's not as much as what we think. It kind of levels that off because of that adaptability of our body, which is actually a really good thing. We want our bodies to be adaptable because from an evolutionary standpoint, it's like, I want to keep this organism alive and pass genes on to the next generation.
Right.
And so an effective way of doing that is having a metabolism that's highly adaptable, so that when we're in times of feast, we can benefit from that, we can store up. When we're in times of famine, we can also stay alive. The difficulty is that our bodies really have not had enough time on an evolutionary timescale to adapt to our current sedentary lifestyle. And so it ends up causing huge problems.
Well, and no famine.
No famine. There is, yeah.
We don't really have periods of famine either, periods of less food or things like that. That used to be a thing where, while you're waiting for the fall harvest or during a long winter, the food would get scarce and calories would decline and things. And that's no longer typically for most people the problem. And so it definitely has changed the way our metabolisms are called upon to function, I guess. Yeah, really, really interesting. And so when we look at the kind of role of non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, in maintenance of our health, maintenance of our weight, in burning calories, really its role is in providing the bulk of our intentional calorie burn. And that's where we really can control so many factors of our life and lifestyle and health, is in this non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So we just have to be cognizant of that's where weight loss really happens. Exercise plays the role of tuning up the machine, keeping my muscles bigger and my heart and lungs functioning and all of those things, so that when I do NEAT, I have the capacity to do things, so that when I do NEAT, I have enough muscle to utilize those calories well and to avoid exhaustion and fatigue and the downregulation like Marc was talking about, that I have enough capacity that my body's not going to go in to kind of protect itself mode. And so that's really what exercise is about, is tuning up the machine and making it run more effectively, more efficiently, so that when I do all the activities that I enjoy doing, when I lead the healthy, active lifestyle, that my capacity is such that I can do all of that and be able to burn those calories and maintain a high metabolism.
Absolutely. I want to talk about NEAT a little bit more real quick, and just clarify some definitions, because how people look at NEAT can change depending on how you're looking at it. And some people define NEAT as only the things that we're not thinking about, right? Fidgeting, taking the trash out, things like that. Other people will then put NEAT there, right? That's just spontaneous activity, and then exercise activity, and then non-exercise physical activity, right? Called NEPA. What we're basically lumping together is that spontaneous and that planned activity that's not exercise.
Right.
And so I think there's some confusion that comes in there sometimes, and people push back, and it's like, well, no, that's just spontaneous, and it's, how am I defining that? How am I looking at this?
Right. So for me, I don't consider the activities that I like to do as exercise. So if I go play tennis or pickleball or volleyball, or even personally, I don't consider like my long runs on a Saturday or something like that when I am more in running. I feel like my Monday through Friday is my exercise activities, and then the things that I enjoy doing, like the long run in the woods, the hike, the playing basketball, volleyball, tennis, whatever, those things are just the activities that I enjoy doing, but they're not my exercise. That's not a workout. That's what I earned from my workouts to be able to do. And so I consider those things part of NEAT. The NEPA we're lumping that together, I guess, in our definition of it, like you said. But I consider my activities and the sports that I like to play not my exercise. I exercise so that I can play the sports. So that I can keep my muscles strong enough so I don't get injured, so that I can avoid the ACL tears and Achilles ruptures, so that I can run enough to have the cardiovascular capacity to play those sports and not be winded and uncomfortable the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's training so you can enjoy the rest of life. And again, that's where exercise really shines. Mm-hmm. It is helpful in maintaining weight loss, but really in making sure that I can do all the things that I want to do, not just having a long life, but living a quality and an active life, right? That idea of lifespan versus health span, and it helps us increase our health span.
Right, and I think, no, you're good. But I think that mindset shift of switching that to like exercise for my activities versus my activities makes exercise much more motivating and much less about weight on the scale, much less of a punishment for bad eating, much less of a like drudgery thing, and more of, I get to train for the things that I love to do.
Yeah.
I get to, optimize my workouts to be able to fuel the activities that I really enjoy doing, so that I'm optimized for those things.
I think that's such a crucial point of I get to, I choose to, I want to, versus I have to, I should, I must.
I should.
Stop
shoulding on yourself.
Yeah. And so I think just that simple switch can really change the way, again, that we approach exercise.
Yeah.
So I wanna bust a myth about exercise and muscle.
Yeah.
So people often say like, oh yeah, you want to add more muscle because then that'll burn a ton more calories. And it's actually not appreciably more. It is more than fat. Fat per pound burns about 2 to 3 calories per day. So 2 to 3 calories per pound of fat mass per day. Muscle is more like 6 to 9. And so it is more, but the benefit of having more muscle isn't so much in the calories that it burns during movement, but in how it impacts our metabolism and improves the flexibility of our metabolism.
Right.
So we talk about our muscles as being a metabolic sink. Will you talk about that?
Yeah, well, essentially it just makes it so that my body can process and use those calories better. That it allows, especially glucose, it allows me to take the blood sugars and use them as fuel more readily so that I can regulate my blood sugar more quickly so that my blood sugar doesn't stay up high for a long period of time, which we could do a whole episode on that, the problems of having high blood sugar and what that causes in terms of atherosclerosis and all kinds of other issues. But essentially, having more muscle allows me to process calories better. It gives you more factories, more opportunity to have more mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, that can do more work in regulating blood sugar, in processing calories, in providing energy, as well as doing work, getting work done so that it's less fatiguing to do more of the fun things that I enjoy doing. But yeah, that metabolic sink concept is essentially mostly about glucose uptake and being able to use that in our cells more quickly, more readily to regulate our blood sugar.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts there?
So just a little physiology. So, to get blood sugar into our cells, we typically need insulin. So we eat some food, our body releases insulin, and that helps our cells pull that energy in. The really cool thing about exercise is, one, you can bring sugar into the cell independent of insulin. So when we exercise, it actually allows our cells to take in more of that circulating blood sugar and use it for energy. Two, is it upregulates some receptors that allow the body to bring that in with insulin over time. So when insulin sends a signal for those cells to take in energy, as we train, our muscles get better at responding to that insulin signaling and bringing that glucose in. And so glucose, we can either use that for energy in the muscle cell, or we can store that in the form of glycogen. And so the more muscle mass we have, the more glycogen that we can store. And so the basically bigger storage space for circulating blood sugar. Same thing, we can store also some amount of fats in our muscle cells. So we call them intramuscular triglycerides. That's just their storage form in muscle. And so we can pull from that as an energy source. And it can also store. And so just our body can be a lot more flexible as a result. And so, when we typically use either, fat or carbohydrate for energy. We can use protein, but it's pretty minimal for the most part. But then the cell can say, okay, well, right now I'm going to use more fat, or right now I'm going to use more carbohydrate. And it can do that a lot more easily and a lot more quickly because of that storage depot, right? It's just easier to get that energy in and out close to the site of activity.
Right.
And so that's a huge, huge benefit. Also, exercise, in addition to improving muscle, we can increase the number of mitochondria we have, as we talked before. We all know what mitochondria do.
Right.
So increases the number, increases their ability to use fat as a fuel source, which again plays into that metabolic flexibility. We get more blood vessels that are growing throughout our body, and so we can get oxygen to those working cells sooner. Again, all of that is improving our ability to quickly switch between fuel sources and prioritize the best fuel for the activity that we're doing.
Yeah.
So higher intensity activities, we need energy quicker, and so we tend to do more carbs. Lower intensity activities, we can use fat more. But as Cameron alluded to, when we've improved the functioning of the system, our ability to handle intensity changes. And so what might have been moderate or higher intensity for us before. As we improve our body's ability to use and process energy, the wear and tear on the system drops, such that it's not as intense for our body as it previously was.
Right. So from building muscle or improving our cardiovascular system, we're able to either deliver more substrates, more building blocks, or not building blocks, energy to the muscle more quickly, and our muscle can do more work. And so it's less wear on the system or less strain on the system because there's more muscles to do the same amount of work. So it allows you to do more work overall. And so, yeah.
Division of labor, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it just makes us capable of processing more calories and doing more. And it's awesome. Yeah. Building muscle, really, really important for this whole thing. And so when we talk about NEAT, so the non-exercise times, the role of exercise in improving NEAT is really important when we can build more muscle and improve our cardiovascular system so that we can deliver stuff to our muscles better for those NEAT activities. Then we're much more effective during that time. And we can essentially grow the amount of the pie on the pie chart that's taking up, and we can grow the size of the pie chart altogether, what the amounts that's representing. If
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so, again, taking it back to kind of the calorie balance math is on the calorie outside of things, that we are changing our lifestyle to support more activity, more movement throughout the day, and that has a large contribution in terms of how much energy that we're putting out. Now, the energy inside of things, we've still got to take into account. Mm-hmm. And so as much as we can adapt in terms of our resting metabolic rate, in terms of NEAT, in terms of adding in more purposeful exercise, if we're not addressing the other side of the equation, then we're not going to make changes to our body composition. And so if we are wanting to add muscle, then we need to be eating enough calories that are going to fuel that. If we want to lose weight, then we need to be eating fewer calories than we expend. And obviously, there's so many things that play into that whole equation, but it's the idea that like a donut, 300 calories, it takes a while running to burn that, right? A much greater amount of time, and I can down a donut in a couple of seconds, right?
Right.
And so again, not that it's bad, but it's just what's the payoff and what's the balance,
right?
And how am I using my calorie budget in a way that fuels me well for feeling good and for performing well, right? Being able to live the life that I want.
Right. It's not that the eating the donut cancels out the run. You still got the benefit of the run.
Absolutely.
Right? To your cardiovascular system and all of those things. The calorie balance may be off, but you still got the benefit of it building your body up. And so keeping consistent with our running or whatever exercise, that's the more important part. So we tune up that machine. And then, we're going to eat the donut or the whatever and, alter that calorie balance, but making sure that we have enough to fuel the activities and fuel the muscle and all of those things is really important. Even if our goal is creating overall body mass loss, right? So if we're trying to lose weight, oftentimes the most successful people long-term are those that worry less about the weight on the scale, especially at first, build up a little bit of muscle first so that they have that better energy sink and have that better ability to burn calories as they then go into more of a calorie deficit. And so that focus on doing what's right for my body, building that up, and then establishing those healthy patterns and activities so that we see the NEAT grow and the number of calories burned with NEAT grow is really important. So one of the things that people ask is often, like, how do I measure NEAT? How do I know how much NEAT I'm getting, if that's the most important thing? You can measure it several different ways in the time you spend doing activities you enjoy outside of your workout activities. You can do it in, just tracking those activities. But my favorite way is just steps. I think a step count is actually one of the most accurate and effective ways of seeing how active have I been. And so oftentimes I'll break my day down into my workout steps versus my activity steps. So if I went on a run in the morning and I got 8,000 steps, but then I ended my day at 11,000 steps, it's not a great day in terms of activity. But if I ended my day at 8,000, or ended my run at 8,000 steps and ended my day at 15 to 1,700 or 20,000, then it's like, oh, I had an active day and I got my workout in. And that's ideal. And so they talk about 10,000 steps. Actually, most things will say that 10,000 steps is the amount that we need to maintain our health. And maintenance is an interesting concept. We talk about this a lot, Mark and I, about how maintenance is a lie. If we're maintaining our health because of aging and things like that, we're actually declining. And so to truly maintain, we have to be improving somewhat. And then life and aging and things like that is going to blunt the growth of that maintenance. And so, or of that improvement. And so that's where real maintaining in terms of staying at the same level is happening. And so to maintain that, we've got to always make sure we're improving.
Absolutely. And as we talked about in the last episode, is really how am I modifying my environment to support the most movement throughout the day. Right? If I'm going to watch TV, let's say for example, right? Simple changes. If I have a daily habit of watching TV, maybe I move that to a different room, right? Instead of being right by the kitchen, it's in another room. What are these tweaks that I can make so that it's just supporting more movement throughout the day, but then also that we're affecting that other side of the equation, right? The energy that we're taking in. Mm-hmm. How do we set up the best environment so that when I'm tired, when I'm feeling emotionally down, that I'm still, my environment's still helping me choose the healthier way to live, right?
Well, so we talked about this in our last episode about parking at the back of the parking lot or taking the stairs instead of the elevator. So I never take elevators if I can help it, like at hotels and things like that. I take the stairs as much as I can, or an escalator versus the elevator, I just enjoy it. I like the movement of it. I like, and maybe that's not even a maybe. We know I'm weird. I've come to enjoy that, I guess, by moving my body. The break, I see that as a break from sitting and from other things like that. Like, oh, I get to move my body, get my blood pumping again, and the way I feel when I do that. And so I actually really enjoy making my path more difficult to things. Because I feel like that rejuvenates me and helps me feel more mentally awake and ready to go and things like that. So finding ways to get more steps in your day, make your life less efficient, those types of things really do pump up NEAT quite a bit. I used to try to grab all of the groceries and carry them in all at once.
You have to, all of them in one trip.
Wrong, because then you're taking fewer steps, right? So instead,
you got me.
Take a bunch of loads and try to keep your pace faster so that you're maintaining a quicker pace and keeping your heart rate up a little bit more, and do multiple trips. So last night I was putting away, we had a party for my son's graduation. And last night we were putting away tables and chairs and things like that. And so I'm rolling these big tables back to the house. Yeah. And it was probably 200 yards total or something like that. And I could have done 2 at a time, but I was like, no, I'm going to do 1 at a time. I'll get more steps in. And so that kind of a thing, being able to make your day less efficient at times, will actually help you get more steps in, more activity in. And so, yeah.
Can I gamify somewhat of what I'm doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, just think about it in those terms of do I have the time right now to be a little bit less efficient and get more steps in? Yeah, then let's do that.
Yeah. Love it.
Kind of goofy.
So I think kind of overarching view, we've got the calorie math, right? Mm-hmm. We want our calories out if we're trying to lose weight to be more than our calories in. And if we're trying to put on muscle, we want our calories in to be a little bit more than out. And those typically don't have to be huge numbers in either direction. We typically want to start small so that we are coaxing the body into adaptation instead of forcing it into adaptation. And then 2, like exercise is important. It helps more in maintaining weight loss. So there, I can't remember the exact name of the database. I think it's like weight loss and control registry or something like that. But it's people who have kept weight off for, I believe, at least 6 months or more. It might be a year or greater. But almost all of those people are regular exercisers. Exercise has all these powerful impacts. It actually, in addition to the other things that we talked about, exercise also impacts our appetite. And so it can increase the accuracy of our appetite, if you will. And so all these positive benefits and necessary for so many reasons other than just changing weight, right? Exercise is really what we need to help us live better longer, right? And then focusing on how can I make my lifestyle less efficient. I love the way that you put that, because typically we're in a kind of grind society where we're always looking to increase productivity, we're always looking to increase efficiency. That is kind of a foreign concept. Like, you want me to be less efficient? Like, I'm supposed to be controlling as well.
Well, park at the back of the parking lot, and as you're walking out to your car, if you've got the time, instead of just walking straight out to your car and driving home, like, take a lap around the building and then get in your car. Like, make it less efficient. But in that, it maybe takes you 3 minutes, but you got, however many steps that you added into it. Didn't really majorly influence or affect your day, but got way more steps than if you just walked straight to your car and drove off.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
So little things like that can make your day less efficient, but make your weight loss way more effective.
More effective, yep. Efficient versus effective.
Yeah.
And then just touching again on the metabolic flexibility of exercise. That's where it has huge benefits, is that we improve how our body processes, uses energy, how it stores energy, and then how it pulls from those stores. And basically, are we more likely to bias energy towards fat, or are we more likely to bias it towards active use or towards storage in our muscles as glycogen or as fat?
Well, so, we say NEAT is kind of the most important for weight loss, but we talk about then exercise is so important for optimizing NEAT. And so, which I 100% agree with. So how do we make sure that we're optimizing our exercise so that we can optimize NEAT, so that we can create this good calorie balance? The key is making sure that when we exercise, that our exercise effort matches our exercise goal, right? That what I'm trying to accomplish with my exercise really supports the NEAT activities that I want to do, and supports what my overall arching health goals are. And the best way to make sure that those two things are in alignment is finding out where your metabolism is at, how to exercise for your body, and then optimizing that for the activities that you want to do, optimizing your workout routines. And so the best way to make sure you know where you're at and how to optimize that is having your metabolism tested, so that we can dial in, here are your workout zones for your cardiovascular exercise. Here's how your metabolism is handling and accepting the changes you're trying to make, so that we can dial everything in. And so getting that metabolic testing done, or offering that to your clients so that you can create programming that really is optimal for them, for their body at this time, is going to help them then optimize their NEAT burn, because you've dialed in their exercise to really match what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said about matching efforts to goals. Because I think one of the things that we get into is it's like, I have to do things just in this exact way, right? There's only one way to exercise. There's only one type of activity to do.
Well, so when I walk through a gym, I always chuckle to myself of thinking, that probably isn't doing what you think it's doing. I'm actually a believer that there's no such thing as bad or wrong exercise form even, or wrong ways to exercise. It's just, is that doing what you think it's doing? And so form can vary in a lot of different ways. So I don't think there's such thing as bad form for any lift. It's just, is that doing what you think it's doing? That form may be beneficial to you in some way. If that's replicating a task that you do, then great, it can be good form for that thing. But is it really lined up for doing what you hope it's doing?
Yep. And have I earned the right to do that movement?
Absolutely. Have I started small enough and built my body up for being able to do that movement that way? So I don't think that there's a wrong way to exercise, but it's just making sure that that matches what I'm trying to accomplish. And that's what I love about metabolic testing. It really helps us dial in, especially with our cardiovascular work and things. But also by measuring our metabolic rate and other things, we can see, is the effect of my muscle training, my strength training, having the effect that I want to? Am I able to process more calories? Am I able to keep my metabolic rate high? Things like that. It really does give me such a good insight and window into, is what I'm doing working?
Yeah. Well, and am I getting sufficient recovery? Because I think that's one of the difficulties is we get the message, oh, I need to be exercising. And then we go all out, right? Oh, if I'm going to exercise, I have to feel like I'm paying for this, right?
Yeah.
And so we end up overtraining in such a way that we're constantly depleted and our body can't repair and recover and build. I say this all the time. We say this all the time. The only training that matters is training that you can recover from. And so if I'm just kind of doing exercise willy-nilly, if I'm not matching my efforts to my goals and then regularly checking, is this moving me in the direction that I want to be, then we can end up adding in a bunch of exercise that isn't moving us towards our goals.
Yeah.
And we may end up injured, we may end up burned out, we may end up fatigued, and then that's going to impact consistency, which we know is key for long-term behavior change and long-term body composition change, long-term health. And so again, I love going over that, of matching my efforts to my goals so that I make sure that I'm moving in the direction that I want and I'm not importing someone else's goals into my life, right?
Right. Well, essentially, if my workouts actually frustrate NEAT, then it's not helping me. It's not moving me forward. If my workouts make me too sore, too tired, too fatigued physically to be able to do the non-exercise activities, or to do the recreational activities that I enjoy, if it's making it so that I'm more likely to sit on the couch and binge a show or a season, then did it really help me?
Yeah.
Whereas if I exercise in a way that supports that and motivates me to want to do those activities, now it's really benefiting me. And so we really have to take a look at the way we're exercising and make sure it's dialed in for our body and make sure that it's dialed in for our goals. And again, metabolic testing for me is one of the best ways of getting a really good snapshot of, am I doing the right things for my body? And then being able to look at, how does this line up with the goals that I want to accomplish?
Absolutely. Having that real-time data, that's what's actually happening in my body, is just crucial for that.
Yeah.
And then understanding that all of our body systems are working in conjunction. All those lifestyle factors, like it's this kind of interconnected web that's weaved. And so changing something here has effects on the other one. And so if we just silo this, right? If we just silo exercise and we don't address its impacts on those other areas, or if we silo in on our nutrition and we don't look at how it impacts our other areas, right? Am I eating too little so that I can't fuel exercise?
Right.
I can't fuel recovery? That's going to be a problem. All of these things have an impact on one another. And so looking at things from that 30,000 foot view really helps us get perspective on, how do I do this sustainably? And like you mentioned, in a way that works with my body, my goals.
Yep, exactly. And then we can always expand that out into other lifestyle factors like sleep quality and stress management and all of those other things that definitely play a role. But dialing in our fitness and activity obviously is one of the things that we're both very passionate about, and I think sets the foundation for being able to make changes in all those other areas as well.
Yeah. All right. So last, let's just give us big picture takeaways. What are a couple of things that people can leave this with and go out and apply to their lives?
Well, so when thinking about exercise and NEAT, so the non-exercise activities, just think, how can I move my body more and more, and how can I support the movement that I want to do with the ways that I'm exercising? And in doing so, in saying, okay, I want to exercise this way so that I can do these activities, that's going to change your motivation quite a bit. And from a clinician standpoint, from my standpoint, it changes the way I prescribe exercises. It changes the way I design their program, because it's not so much about optimizing building of muscle for the optimal amount. It's balancing that out with their life and lifestyle too, and saying, okay, how do we build lean muscle while also allowing them to do these activities that they enjoy doing and keep them motivated and help them stay, on track. And so I think keeping that in balance of exercising to support the activities that I love doing gives me a better long-term outlook, that 30,000 foot view. And so that would be my biggest takeaway, is make sure that your fitness effort lines up with your fitness goal by taking a look at what are the neat activities, the non-exercise activities that I love doing, and how can I support that with the workouts that I'm doing.
Absolutely. I love it. And how do I make that consistent over time, right? How do I set that on repeat ad nauseum and go year after year, decade after decade? And then again, I'm regularly reevaluating, right? Are these still my goals? Are my efforts still matching my goals, and making this an iterative process?
Yeah.
And doing it in such a way that we can recover from that, and it's not so brain heavy, right? I'm always having to make this choice.
Well, it's a lifestyle and a mindset instead of I'm trying to do this all the time. It becomes just your way of life.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I don't even think, like Mark brought up how I, take the stairs, I think I brought that. Anyway, but
Parking far away.
Yeah, parking far away. But that has just become part of who I am and not a conscious decision necessarily.
Right, it's not like, okay, I'm going to park here, and now it's just, I just do this enough. And so that's what we're looking is, can I change the framework of my habits and of my environment so that those support my goals, and so that supports all the efforts that I'm making in all these different areas of my life.
Yeah.
So,
yep. Awesome.
Good stuff. Thanks for joining us today. As always, remember to like, follow, and subscribe for more of this content, and we will catch you on the next episode.